Wagwan, and Happy New Year. I found this really dusty hat. This thing is disgusting. I got it last year, and I figured I might as well wear it right now because right now it's January 1st for y'all, isn't it? Happy New Year. We here at the Shift Gear podcast wish you bear success, bear ambition. What else? What are other like positive words we can give people? Bear
Just good luck,
aspirations,
good
good
draws.
luck. Yeah, that's not very like us though. We got to be like Torontonian, bro. It's got to be like bear draws or something. I don't know. But
Sure.
best of fortunes to all mans and womans who are here listening to the Shift Gear podcast. We hope 2024 was fantastic. We hope 2025 is fantastic-er for you. So today, Ciaran is. I actually don't know. Where the hell are you?
I'm in Mexico, and y'all.
Okay. What are you doing in Mexico exactly?
Well, for Christmas this year, my parents are like surprised. Like you and your sisters are going to Mexico, and then our flight was like literally like the next day.
That is
So
crazy. Okay.
yeah.
So are you there with your parents or no?
No, just my sisters.
They just sent y'all?
Yeah.
That's kind of funny. What part of Mexico are you in?
I'm like basically in Cancun,
Okay.
Playa Mujeres.
When are you coming back?
Uh, Coming back on the 6th, I think.
Oh,
So
that's
pretty
a
long
long trip.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, really long. And then I'm coming back next month for Merida, which is like basically a couple hours north of here. I'm coming back in April for Monterey. So lots of Mexico in the first half of 2025
That
for
is a
me.
lot of Mexico. Okay, that's pretty sick. So we didn't really know what to do this week for Shift Gear, so we sat down and used our collective 3 IQ to come up with the concept of maybe we'll review the top 10 decks of the year. And the criteria for this is we basically just based it off Limitless points, which if you don't know, Limitless points are basically like this like made up metric system that is awarded to each finish of each deck for each person. So if like you look at yourself, you'll have X amount of Limitless points based on how you placed over your career, and certain things they're kind of weighted based off event prestige as well. So if you top 8 at Worlds, it's worth a lot more than top 8ing at a regionals, and et cetera, et cetera. So Limitless points are actually pretty fantastic creation, and we use them to rank the top 10 decks of 2024. So what you'll see off the top, and one thing I noticed when I looked at this is there's a lot of like it will be skewed a little bit to towards cards that were out for the entirety of 2024. So, for example, a card like Terrapagos wasn't really out for that long, so that's not featuring on the list. But this is essentially what we've had all year, and I don't think you'll be surprised at all with the top 5. Honestly, like when I look at this, it's not too surprising. But before we get into this, let us know your guesses for the number 1 deck of the year down below, and then you can look at it after and see if you're right or if you're wrong. I know I was wrong, so we'll take it from there. Ciaran, any initial thoughts on this? If you were to guess your number 1 pick, and I guess you have you
I
seen the
know what it
list?
is.
Oh damn, you saw
Yes,
the list. Okay. Um, I'll tell you what mine was. Mine was Reggie Drago. I thought Drago was going to be number 1.
Hmm.
Spoiler alert, it is not.
Yeah, I think if
Um,
you did like from when it was a good deck till now, it would definitely be number one. But it
just with
really wasn't a good deck until August. So just the fact that it's going to be on this list so high kind of speaks to how good it actually is.
Yeah,
So
just like the dominance of it, I thought would carry it all the way to the top. But actually, it's not even close to number 1. Number 1 has almost double the points of number 2. So, all right, let's hop into it. We're gonna go one by one, kind of give our thoughts on the deck, our surprise level, etc., etc. So let's start with number 10. I feel like it's only fitting you introduce us to number 10.
yeah, it just snuck in there. This deck has been honestly kind of dead for a while now, which is sad. But CPOW sneaking in at number 10. I feel like it was a really strong deck basically all of last year up until maybe when Twilight Masquerade came out. It kind of started to fall off a bit. Then Dustmore came out, and I feel like that was the final nail in the coffin. But I felt for a long time CPOW was just one of those decks that was super solid. I think that one format, right when rotation happened, I think it was one of the best decks. I still maintain I think it was the best deck. I can't remember what set that was. The one before Twilight Masquerade. Um,
Temporal Forces?
yeah, maybe Temporal Forces or something. No, not. Yeah, actually, yeah,
I
the one
think
that
it
had like
was
the Cobalion and stuff. Yeah.
the Future Dudes.
So yeah, I think C Pow is just like a deck I think has one of the most loyal fan bases. I think the deck is like it's just so incredibly fun. And it is like a super skill based deck, which I think a lot of people enjoy. And I think there's a core group of players who would consistently do well with C Pow, like G Shen especially. So that really went to show like how strong the deck was in top players' hands. And it won a regional. I actually think in one of its weaker iterations. Owen Cameron won Dortmund in this year, which was hyped to see the deck get a win. And then I think the standout for me for CPOW was definitely Indianapolis last year. There was 4 CPOWs in top 8, including a second, and then there was like 2 more in top 16. And just overall the tournament, like that kind of dominated that one. So, I mean, everyone knows how much I love CPOW. I've played the deck for super long. If the deck ever becomes meta again, I'll probably jump back on. But I think 10 is a fitting spot for it because I really do feel like it really only lasted the first maybe like 6 months of the year. And it's kind of tapered off since then.
Just snuck in. And you know what it beat out, actually, which I was really surprised to see even like remotely close to this list? Arceus V-Star was number 11.
Yeah, that deck
like,
sucks, bro.
Yeah, that sucks. It sucked for a while, so I'm really surprised that got on there. But Arceus is like, I don't know. The card is just so broken, but we don't need to get into that. Anyways.
Yeah, I think before we move on, one other thing I want to shout out was like Lucas Zing getting top 16 at Worlds with CPOW. When I think CPOW was like a tier 3 deck for that event. I think it just goes to show like the plot armor. If you're a CPOW enjoyer, it treats you well. So yeah, Lucas almost made top 8 at Worlds with CPOW. That would have been insane. Unfortunately, he did not.
Also, it benefits very deeply from people not expecting it, right? People don't really test for it.
I don't know. I think people just know how the deck works. Like maybe with the drop in Manaphy at that tournament.
Well, it depends,
actually,
right?
I think people are still playing Manaphy,
but like Greninja can feast, man. If people don't expect it, and that's such a strength of the deck, just being able to maintain that one prize board state and take 2 whenever you want. So I feel like not having Manaphy around is helpful. And there's other things like I don't know, like there's so many factors that go into people preparing for tournaments and stuff. And
yeah.
I feel like guys who've been around the game a lot, like you and I, like we understand how to play against all these archetypes because we've seen them before. But if you're a newer player and you've never seen Chen Pao before, and then it pops up as a tier 3 deck and you're playing it at Worlds, I feel like it's kind of difficult. But I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah, so CPOW, number 10.
Solid deck. It's a very solid deck. So number 9, kind of surprising to me as well. This one kind of snuck in there, but it makes a lot of sense. We have Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon is an interesting one because this card's been out for a while, and I remember when it first came out, it was super hyped and then really underperformed the first little while. I believe it was like late 2023. So to see it like kind of come back and do really well is a little bit. It's a nice thing, but it was also kind of surprising to me because I kind of wrote it off when it first came out and it flopped. I was like, this card's whatever, and then people started to make it make sense with like Moltres V and Dark Patch and Energy Switch, and there's a lot of different iterations of Roaring Moon, and still to this day, Roaring Moon is pretty strong. Like for me personally, it's one of my number 1 like picks for San Antonio coming up still. So the deck is really strong. Roaring Moon is a good card. I mean, you're able to hit 220, which is such a magic number, with basically no drawback, and the ability to just knock something out whenever you want is also really, really strong in the current meta. And still to this day, it's still gaining support. Like cards like Pekkarunt EX that came out recently that makes the deck just so good. And even Baby Petch is such a good kind of like mid-game attacker, early game donker. Like you have so many different things you can kind of do with Roaring Moon EX. So it was nice to see it on that list. Any thoughts there on that one?
Yeah, I think Roaring Moon in the deck, I think it was one of the most popular ones at the very start of the year, right? Ross Gothing got top 8 at Charlotte, which kind of like became like the default way to play Roaring Moon. And it was like the default aggro deck for a really long time up until rotation, really. And then I think we saw with rotation, we saw that like the Dunsparce iteration of Roaring Moon, which I really enjoyed playing that deck. That deck was really fun. If I didn't like playing CPOW so much, I probably would have rocked that deck to some tournaments. And it kind of fell off for a bit. And then it was a huge surprise when it got second at the World Championships, I think. I don't think it was on anyone's radar. And like ever since then, I feel like it's been like a fringe meta deck that we see pop up every now and then, right? Got top 4 at Baltimore. Don't know if it's gotten top cut since then. But every tournament, like, you know, like Roaring Moon, like you see it around. So yeah, it's one of those rare decks I think on the list that like has really been a deck almost the whole season, with some major finishes. And I don't think it ever got a win. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
I
it
don't
was
remember
competing for top
winning.
cut for a lot of times. So.
I mean, you'll know it now from the slides that we make after this video if it won or not. You'll see it on the bottom right, but I don't remember it winning. We might just be stupid, but I don't know. Okay, cool. I have actually really good entry for Am I in the Wrong this week as well that we'll kind of weave in at some point. So at number 8, we have Snorlax Stall, which to me is kind of unsurprising. I did expect to see it on this list. It's always one of those decks that's a low play rate but high conversion. So Snorlax being there, it makes a lot of sense. It's been a good deck almost the entire year, and it's kind of astounding that it's been a good deck almost the entire year because of how the deck wins and how a lack of matchup knowledge really favors it a lot of the time, and people still tend to not care about it and kind of just push it to the back burner and get burnt by it at tournaments. And I'm guilty of that at times as well, where I say I don't care, I'm not going to hit it, but then that 3%, that 4% sneaks up, and if you hit it, you hit it, right? So yeah, Snorlax has been good the entire time for a card that nobody really looked at when it came out in Pokemon Go. That was kind of just under the radar, and I don't really remember how it came to be, but the first iterations were so cool. And I remember we thought, hey, this will be a good addition to a deck, to a format that was lacking like stall and control for a long time. We didn't have anything like it for, I don't know, what, 4 years? Like, it's been a while. And to see it come back was kind of refreshing, and now I feel like everyone's ready for it to go. But at the time, it was pretty sick.
Yeah, I think the big thing that happened was Countercatcher came out, which I know wasn't in 2024, but then like that kind of led into 2024, which is I think what solidified it as an actual archetype.
Mm.
Because before that, I think it was just way too difficult to trap stuff. But yeah, I think Snorlax is one of those decks where it's like it's just annoying to hit. It's like one of those decks in the format where like you're always thinking about it, and like it is disrespected all the time because people are like, yeah, I'm not taking for Snorlax because it always has a lower play rate than like how good the deck truly is.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen like a couple tournaments this year where like Snorlax like snuck into the finals. I think Azul won a regionals with it. If I'm remember, yeah, he won Stockholm. He won a special event. Won a South American regional. I don't know. It just feels like I'm just like scrolling through Limitless right now. It just seems like Snorlax is always competing for like top 8 or top 16, right? Like for the like play rate that it has, it's always like just making day 2, converting well. And I really think the whole season it's always been a deck. It's never been like a huge meta share type of deck, and it never will be just because it is a stall deck. But I think it's like sneakily like one of the best decks of 2024 for sure.
Yeah, there have been times where it's kind of like fallen off the radar, but then someone comes up with it and we remember it's good again. Like, even when Pecker on EX came out, like, we thought that was like, this is the final nail in the coffin for Lax, and it still survives. It still does really well. So, just an ode to how good that is. In addition to like Snorlax as well, like cards like Watermon, Ogremon is good just because you block retreat, and like I can't think of very many formats where cards like that saw a lot of play. It's kind of strange because like I've been playing a lot of like old formats, and I typically do over the Christmas break most years because there's not much going on like Pokemon wise. And when you go back to these old formats, like there are tons of cards that say your opponent can't retreat next turn, and none of them see any play. So it's really surprising to see Snorlax keep doing well. Even in a format with canceling Cologne and Prime Catcher, it still does well. So shout out to Snorlax one time. All right. Number 6. This one was also surprising. Or sorry, number 7. This one was also surprising to me, but not for the same reason. I thought this would be higher. But we have Giratina V-Star, which was featured in a multitude of decks. So there was obviously Lost Tina, and then there was Arctina, and both of them had their times to shine. Arctina was really good in 2023. Same with Lost Tina, really good in 2023. But at the beginning of 2024, the very first regional of the year was won by John Ang playing Lost Tina. So Lost Tina a little bit lower than I thought it would be, but I mean, Giratina as a card was always really strong. It's kind of like Roaring Moonish, where you hit those like key numbers of 280, and you also have the one hit KO option at any time. You obviously have the support of Mirage Gate, Comfy, stuff like that, and this was one of my very first loves. I loved this deck when it came out, and I thought it was so cool and how you could weave in like 2 prizers, 1 prizers, and Lost Box still remains a great deck today. So shout out to Tina one time, and then one time when Lost Tina started to fall off a little bit, Arctina kind of picked it back up, and Arctina was really cool for a little while there, and then now they're both kind of dead, unfortunately. The last application of Tina, of course, is in Regidrago. So a lot of representation for Giratina V-Star. I don't really know how that factors into this equation. I don't think it does in terms of Regidrago because it's not on the icon, right? So it doesn't factor into this. But if Giratina V-Stars, like if this was like a top 5 cards countdown, I think Giratina V-Star is probably number 1, if not number 2.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I'd go that high with it, but I think Giratina was like, it's definitely getting carried by like the first half of 2024. I think that and Gardevoir were like the 2 best decks, I think for sure, in that format. I keep forgetting what the set is called. Or Paradox Rift or no?
Paradox Rift was LAIC 2023, I think.
Yes, so that format, yeah, because that was one that we had in 2024 at the start. Like you said, John won Portland, and then we had Vinny Fernandez. He won the next one in Charlotte, and then it got second by Brent at Liverpool, and then it got third in Knoxville by Ian Robb, and then first by Brent in Melbourne. Then I won a Singapore regional, I guess. So it's just like then next regional like got third, and I'm just looking like all these best players kept playing Giratina and doing well with it. And I really feel like that's like the deck was very difficult to play. But I think like the best in the best players' hands, the deck saw so much success.
Mm-hmm.
And even going into EUSE rotation, right? I think a lot of people like doubted if the deck was still going to be super strong. And then we saw Isaiah Bradner get second place with a unique build that played the Bennett. I think Azul got top 16 as well. So I think Giratina really for most of the year was a deck that you had to respect going into a tournament. Like every tournament I went to, I was expecting to be facing like a lot of Giratina. Um, and then I don't really remember exactly why it fell off when we got to the NAIC format with Twilight Masquerade, but it really feels like we haven't seen Lost Tina since then.
Yeah.
I think maybe because we saw stuff like Klefki and Fluttermane getting popular, and then like I guess Reggie Drago's pretty good against it. So, oh, that's actually the main reason. But
Yeah.
yeah, Tina was a very feared and respected deck, I think, for a majority of the season, or
Yeah,
at
and
least
like
the first half of the season.
what's
So.
crazy too is still like you look at Limitless tourney sometimes and you still will see Lastina doing well. Like there are times where I've looked at like a day 2 and there's been a random Lastina sprinkled in there. So the card is still, or sorry, the deck itself is still really decent. It's respectable. It's just not one of like the top decks. So nobody really cares too much about it. It's probably in that tier 3, maybe tier 4 area, but. Shout out Tina V-Star, really cool deck. Honestly, like one day when we go back and we play this as a retro format, quote unquote, Tina V-Star will be one of the most fun decks to kind of play.
Yeah, I think Paradox Rift will be a great retro format for sure.
Yeah, and like people already build it. Like it's crazy. The official rules of retro, I was looking this up. So all the cards have to be out of rotation. So Tina V-Star, like as a Lost Zone deck, will be there as of April. And then I think there's some other like stipulation to it, like they have to be I don't know, it's like the main card has to be out for 2 years or something for it to be considered retro.
Okay, so it won't be retro yet, but
not yet, but people are already starting to buy the cards, and I saw people playing Sword and Shield to Brilliant Stars the other day, and you know we're getting there, it makes me feel old.
nice.
All right, number 6, and then after this we'll weave in our little segment. We have Raging Bolt EX, which surprised me as well a little bit because this feels like a bit of a newer card, even though I guess it really isn't. It was only when Twilight Masquerade came out that the deck really only got good because of Ogremon. But honestly, like this deck has been the pinnacle of consistency when you think about it. Like over the time it's been out, like it always seems to show up in every single tournament, no matter what you do. And going into this latest one, it was supposed to be BDIF by a country mile. I don't know what really happened. That and Zard were both super hyped going into this current format with Briar and Dustnor and stuff. And Raging Bolt kind of just felt like it underperformed, and which is really rare because Raging Bolt was kind of overperforming the entire lifespan of the card. But now, not so much. Really versatile card, can be paired to a lot of things. The Ancient Engine is just really strong, and Ogremon as a backup is great. So you can KO anything in front of you. I mean, the card is really clunky, really heavy, and I played it to a cup like last week, and I absolutely hated the deck. Like I'd never touched it before, and I was like, all right, whatever. Like I don't care about this cup, and I just like I don't know. I really did not enjoy it. It doesn't feel like you have a lot of outplay potential, which I guess we knew, but it is very linear. So I guess that's the one knock I have on the deck.
Yeah, I think Roaring or Raging Bolt, it was like one of those things where it's just like that was like the default deck. People were like, all right, like if you're learning to play Pokemon, like go play Raging Bolt. And I think a lot of people do enjoy it. Like it does have a fun like gameplay loop of like, you know, just like, okay, like do teal dances, draw all these cards, blow stuff up. It is pretty fun. Yeah, it just felt like for the longest time, like it was seeing like 15-20% meta shares, like regardless of like the tournament. So like even if like we didn't think the deck was like that good, like it was seeing like insane amount of decks placements in day 2. But I do think like it might have been like there's been definitely spots where the deck was underplayed, I think, by like a lot of top players. Because I mean like the deck does like farm Rescue Drago, for example. And every now and then, right, we see someone have a good run. Like we had Vincent get Owen get top 4 in Toronto, like a meta huge like filled with Dragos. We saw Caleb Gettimer, one of the best players in the game, pick it up and he won. Louisville. So the deck has seen like tons of top cuts. And one other thing, I guess, it's not really like that relevant for like Masters, but the deck had a very successful run in juniors as well. I think it was like a huge deck in juniors. It's definitely won some regionals there. So yeah, I think it was like if I had to pick the aggro deck of the year, I'd probably give it to Raging Bolt. And I mean, we still seeing a crazy amount of play, like even heading into 2025. So
I still hate the design of the thing, like the little like giraffe Raikou. I think that's so dumb. I hate all three of what they did to those legendaries, man. Gadget Fire is like kind of cool, but Walking Wake, what are we doing?
Yeah, Walking Wake I don't like. Raging Bolt's like somewhat okay to me.
It's a giant ancient giraffe. Like we
I don't
couldn't
know.
come up with like anything better for this. Okay, so I'm gonna stop complaining. Let's weave in our "Am I in the wrong" segment, and this one is very, very long. So I'm gonna summarize this. Like I'm talking,
Okay.
like I'm scrolling like multiple times down my Discord messages for this one. Not gonna say who was sent in from, just because it's a weird situation. So I'll just let him have his
Mm-hmm.
anonymity. So basically, at a cup yesterday, I was paired into the only junior of the tournament in my last round of the tournament. And sorry, if you're new here, this is a segment we do most weeks where people send us in their stories, and we basically give our opinions on if they're in the wrong or not. So yeah, sorry, paired into the only junior of the tournament in the last round of the tournament. The junior had already locked up their win. Junior won no matter what. And the master going into the last round, and the master's the one who sent this in, was 202 and needed the win to get into top 8. Basically explains to the junior, hey, this is what's happening. Would you consider scooping? And this junior 7, so he went to the dad as well. And asked the dad, hey, this is the situation. Would you consider scooping so I can get in? Your son already won the tournament. And he basically says no. The kid was 7, so he wasn't trying to pressure him or whatever. And the kid said, no, I don't want to. I'd rather ID than concede. And so the master obviously said, okay, let's play it out because ID does nothing for me. They sit down, they play out the game pretty regularly, and a turn comes up where the junior basically doesn't recognize they have enough energy to attack. And this is a very like pivotal turn, and they say pass. After the master draws their card, the junior realizes, oh, hey, there's a third energy hiding under there. Can I attack? The master then says, no, sorry. Like, he didn't really know what to do at the time, but he said, no, sorry. Like, I can't really let that happen because it's such a pivotal turn. And the junior just starts bawling. Like, kids, like, just bawling, screaming, crying, like, really bad scene. And the master just says, nah, this ain't worth it. He scoops up his cards and leaves. Essentially, his question is, and he apologizes to the dad after whatever, and the dad starts, like, shaming him for saying, hey, like, you shouldn't pressure a kid into conceding in the first place. This is wrong, et cetera, et cetera. And basically saying, how do I handle this? Am I in the wrong? I didn't know what else to do when there's a screaming, crying kid other than take out my cards and leave. But obviously, as a master, like, it is tough too, like with time commitments and stuff. Like, you have to make time to go to a cup. You got to drive out. Like, it doesn't matter as much as it is like, hey, I'm a grown ass man playing a children's game. This is a day of your life. You stood there and kind of wasted if you don't top 8. So I do understand both sides of this. Basically, he's asking, was I in the wrong?
The Whoever sent this in, you are 100% in the wrong. You just asked a 7-year-old to scoop to you at a cup. Like, bro, just win. Like, come on, man. That's like the weakest thing I've ever heard in my life. And then, like, probably the kid was on edge, and then you're not in the wrong for not letting the kid take it back. Like, that's fine. But there's probably, like, the kid already felt a bit intimidated or nervous, like, just because of what you did earlier. So yeah, I think that was, like, why are you asking a 7-year-old to scoop to you, man? Like, a kid is there because they like playing Pokemon.
Yeah.
The kids like winning. Like, kids don't understand the whole aspect of, like, oh, I need to make top 8, whatever. Like, if you're an adult, like respectively, if you can't beat a 7-year-old, like, I don't want you in top cut. Like,
Fair enough. Yeah, and like he also wrote down in like this really long thing, and I was trying to summarize it the best I could, but he did write down. He said, "I now know that this proposition is incorrect and against the rules, and I will not be doing it going forward." So I guess he did learn a lesson there as well. My opinion is this: I think it's okay to explain the situation, to like basically make sure that the other side understands what is going on, and just saying, "Hey, like, I know you already have the tournament wrapped up. I'm just playing for my life." But I don't think it's right to ask them to scoop at any point. And I think I agree with you in the sense, like, yes, you should be able to beat a junior at any time.
but like, do you really need to explain what's going on? Like, I feel like they either know or they like, bro, like, if I played you at a cup and I was like 4-0 and you were like 3-1 or something, like, I would just know to scoop to you because we're friends and I play the game enough, right?
Yeah, but he's talking to a 7-year-old. That's the thing. And like,
no,
the
that's what I'm saying. But like, I'm saying,
yeah,
like if the dad probably should know what's going on, and the dad can just tell the kid if he wants you to scoop or not, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't like if like this kid and like the dad don't know this random like adult, like, there's no reason to scoop, right? Like,
yeah.
But like, maybe if like the dad like knew the guy, he'd be like, okay, like, kid, like, just like scoop because you already won. Like, we like this guy. Like, let him into top cut. Like, I don't know. I find in general, if you've ever been to cups or whatever, like when people scoop to each other or tie, it's like you don't need to ask anybody. Like, you just know it's your friends or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
so
you
you
decide
do
if
it.
you want to do it or not, right?
Yeah.
So I personally think it's like never okay to ask someone to scoop to you straight up.
I agree with you. I
like-
just don't think it's wrong to explain what's happening if someone doesn't understand. And I don't think you should explain actively. I think it's one of those things where maybe just bring it into conversation or whatever, just in case they don't understand what's going on. But obviously, you have to play the game and win the game. I don't think they're wrong for explaining their side of it, but I do think they're wrong for asking for a concession directly.
Yeah, but I mean, like explaining it is basically like asking them to scoop to you. Like, hey, look, buddy, like you already won. Like, I need to win to make top cut. Like, it's
I
like you're
wouldn't
inferring. Like,
phrase it like that, but yeah, like I get what you're saying. I think it's okay because sometimes like you genuinely just explaining where you're coming from. Like maybe you're in a nervy place or whatever, and the guy's just like, hey, like this game does mean a lot to me, and kind of explaining that in that way. And like I think
but
that's
then
fine.
you're putting like pressure because again, you have to remember it's like a 7-year-old, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like that. Like they're not as emotionally mature. Like they might feel pressured because they're playing an adult, right? So
I'm of the same
I
mind
think
as
when
you, where you say you should
yeah.
be able to beat a 7-year-old if you want to top cut a tournament. I absolutely agree. I'm just thinking in the perspective of this person who I guess doesn't play the game as much. I do understand where they're coming from. It's kind of what I'm getting at.
I don't know. I just feel like you should just like win. Like I remember last year at NAIC, like I was out of day 2, but like I had to still get points to make sure I got like the $1,000, $1,500 like travel stipend thingy. And like my opponents literally did not. It did not matter if they won because like they couldn't make day 2, and like I still wasn't asking people to scoop to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I don't like you don't need to put the pressure on it, right? But it's like if I played against you, for example, like you would know the situation. You would have just been like, okay, here I'm gonna scoop to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I wouldn't even have to ask. So it's like I don't know. I think this if it's people you're friends with and like they're comfortable with one another, then like I think that's different. But like I think just random strangers, especially when it's kids, like I don't know. I wouldn't even like bring any of this up. Just like play the game and win. It's also like a League Cup. Like
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
not
that
that deep.
serious.
Yeah, it's not that deep. Yeah, I agree.
So
Yeah, I guess you get a conflicting set of opinions on this one. I think it's I don't really think it's conflicting. I think we just come from different places,
yeah.
which we both agree that you probably shouldn't ask a 7-year-old to concede to you. So that is our segment. Are you in the wrong? And this week that guy was in the wrong, unfortunately. But it seems like he learned a lesson and will not be doing it going forward.
Yes.
So that's the W there. All right, let's move on to number 5. And I actually lost the page, so Kieran, you have to carry this one real quick.
It was Lost Box and Nil, number
Fantastic.
5.
Okay, I just
which
found it.
I think that's not a surprising one at all to be on this list. It feels like Lost Box pretty much the whole year has been pretty good. I think when Reggie Drago took over, we kind of saw the deck take a bit of a dip.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like, hey, we still saw people like Michael Davidson getting second at Louisville. We've seen now with Pikachu EX, the deck kind of having a bit of a resurgence. But I do think before Kiram, I think Lost Box was just like a force, and like a lot of top players favored Lost Box. It won NAIC, right, with Hedrick. So yeah, not surprising at all to see Lost Box in the top 5. Definitely deserved, and definitely a deck that if you've played it all in 2024, you've had many battles against for sure.
Yeah, and like you still see it pop up. Like when Pikachu EX came out, the deck kind of resurged for a bit, but didn't really all at once. So obviously, like the deck was so strong they needed to print a card like Kyurem to counter it. I don't think they needed to, but they did.
I don't think they need to either.
Yeah, they definitely didn't need to, but I think the deck is really cool. I've always liked how the deck operates. You're able to control your board state. Like it does take a good amount of skill to pilot, and when you think about like the most healthy formats of 2024, 2023, most of them include Lost Box. Just because Lost Box is such a cool and kind of inclusive deck, and it enables a lot of attackers that may not see the light of day otherwise. Things like Pikachu EX that are really hard to power up. Mirage Gate just kind of unlocks everything. The one beef with Lost Box that I've kind of had in the past is it does feel really reliant on you finding your Colress or your Pokegears or whatever, and when you don't hit it, the deck kind of feels terrible and sucks, and you are sometimes the victim of more variance than other decks. I think variance hits you a bit harder, but super cool deck. I was super happy when it came out to see it kind of do well, and the whole engine with Cramorant and Sableye really, really cool. So awesome to see Lost Box.
Yeah, I think what I think is cool about Lost Box is like there's multiple iterations of it. Like you had the Radzard version for a while, you had just like the toolbox, and then like as sets come out, right? Like the deck is just very flexible. So like we saw stuff like Iron Hand start going in the deck. Like even like Hoopa EX at some point was seeing play.
I remember that, yeah.
Roaring Moon was in the deck for a while. So it is really cool when a deck can kind of like adapt and like evolve over the year. And like Pokemon, even like I said, they were printing a lot of counters to it. Like Jirachi got printed, which we carried like into the start of 2024. Like obviously Kyurem got printed. So yeah, I think Lost Box is a deck like tons of people enjoy. And was always a deck.
And
like,
we'll definitely go back over this like before rotation when we do our like memorials for all these decks. This is definitely one of those decks we're gonna miss a lot, I think, when they all rotate out very soon. Speaking of decks, we're gonna miss a lot when they all rotate out very soon. We have number 4. We have your dog Lugia Archeops. I'm gonna just let you carry this one. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm actually kind of surprised that Lugia is number 4. Because I don't really feel like Lugia was ever like that crazy dominant in 2024. I mean, I feel like everyone knows obviously when Lugia came out, it was like the deck for that season. Um, but then like Lugia kind of fell off, I feel like, for a long time. And I think it kind of had a little mini resurgence. Kind of, I think at the start of this season, to be honest, I think Baltimore was kind of like dominated by Lugia. I mean, myself, Steven, Varesco, and Rahul, we all made top 8 with Lugia, so 3 of us. It won a South American regional, Yarko, then Louisville we had. Me and Yarko make top 8 again. Rahul was getting second in, I forget where he was, somewhere in Europe. So, I don't know. The deck was just like a huge resurgence, I think, in the back half of the year. Because I really, and I can't remember the deck seeing much play like at the beginning of the year. Like I'm looking through Limitless here, like it was barely making day 2. Like I'm seeing like one at a time, maybe.
Yeah, it
Um,
was. I think a lot of what this score is carried by the fact that there are very dedicated Lugia warriors that play it all the
yeah,
time, and like you said, when you look through these tournaments, like even when it was down, there's still a few people in day 2.
yeah. So I think Chinchino coming out in the set for EUIC kind of like gave the deck a mini revival. I personally still don't think the deck was good back then. But I think in Twilight Masquerade when we got the legacy energy, that's finally when I feel like Lugia is like, okay, like this is back to like being a good deck. And it honestly didn't even do that well at an AIC. Like Worlds, Rahul made the win into top cut, or like the ASIM cut. But yeah, now I think every tournament you go to, I think Lugia is back to being a dominant force. Like I'm just like scrolling through some of the Limitless pages here. Like there is a lot of Lugia, like
Yeah,
every regional we've had this
yeah,
season. Um, and yeah, like you said, I think there's some like very dedicated Lugia players, like myself included, who I think have definitely raised the profile or like proven that like Lugia is still a deck to be reckoned with. Um, and I think going forward, like into the next season, like 2025, like I still think Lugia is gonna be a good deck. I think it has one last hurrah once Regigigas comes out, which I think is a huge buff to the deck. So I mean, Lugia is obviously a deck that's like special to me, so I'm happy that it made the top 5. But I'm actually very surprised that it made the top 5.
Well,
But
you know what's kind of crazy?
I,
You could have propelled Lugia into number 3. Actually, it's only 5 limitless points below
wow,
number 3, and any of you who played it this year, if you guys got like one more win, it was number 3. That's
yeah,
how
like
high Lugia could have gotten. Like it is really
that's
close to being
crazy.
Lugia in our number 3.
Yeah, I think Lugia also it always does well in Japan as well. Like every
Yes.
time I look at a Champions League, I feel like it's always getting second or like top 4 or something.
Well,
Like
like the general like concept of the deck and like the whole like system of it is super consistent. Like it's always been the same. Nothing's really changed to the attackers around it. So people can
yeah,
pick this up like 2 formats later after it's good or whatever and still do well with it just because Lugia is a strong card. So
yeah. I mean, I
I
put
think
Lugia down for a really long time. So
yeah, just the consistency of the card and like the aspect of hey, I can pick this up at any time and do well into any meta is probably what carried it so far.
yeah,
Okay, so on number 3, which is honestly, I'm really surprised how close it was to number 4. We have Gardevoir EX. I really thought this card or this deck would be higher. I guess now we're into the top 3 where like the top 2 are very dominant forces. Gardevoir did have its time where it was super duper dominant, but Gardevoir has always kind of been like Lugia, really consistent throughout the entire year. Never really completely fell off. There were times where it was a little bit down to the back burner, but it was very, very strong at the start of the year. And those Gardevoir Lost Tina battles will always reign in my head. Those were so much fun. Those that matchup specifically is something I'll play a lot in retro when this becomes retro. But Gardevoir, very, very strong card. Another kind of victim of circumstance a little bit when rotation hit. Obviously, you lost Arcana, you lost the Mirage Step Curlia, you lost Zacian V. The entire deck needed to be reinvented, and it took a while for it to get reinvented, but when it was, it became really, really strong again. So now you see it with Drifloon, with Screamtail, entirely different from what it used to be. But Gardevoir EX, awesome, awesome deck.
yeah. I think Gardevoir is one of my favorite decks. If I had to pick, it's probably my favorite deck of the year. The broken iteration back at the start of the
Back in
year.
the day, yeah.
I yeah, I think it was like it honestly feels like longer, like a long, long time ago from when I was
Mm-hmm.
playing that deck. But I guess I was playing it back in March. Um, yeah, I really think it was the best deck in that format. I think Like it literally felt like if I sat across from my opponent and I felt like I was a better player than them, like I was gonna win if I like set up. Like that's how good I felt Gardevoir was.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a super like skill based deck. I think like it was super fun. It was super intricate. Like you said, the battles you could have against the Giratina decks and just Lost Zone in general was like awesome. Like weaving in cards like Cresselia. Like the mirror match was actually really really fun and skill
So
based,
fun.
which
Yeah.
I think you can't say for a lot of decks. So yeah, I think at the start of the year, like before rotation, it was like an awesome deck that a lot of players enjoyed. And I think rotation happened. I think a lot of people thought the deck was going to fall off hard. Like you said, it kind of got reinvented a bit. Fabian got ninth at UIC. Piper and Stefan were also in that top 32. So it took some great players to like iterate on the deck. And I think by the time we got to NAIC of the year, like I think then Gardevoir went back to a little bit to being the best deck. I think it like completely dominated NAIC, and I remember like Cups right after that, like kind of dominating. And I really think it was like if Regidrago didn't become tier one, I think we would have like continued to see Gardevoir just kind of like be like the best deck. And then even when people thought it fell off, right? Like Henry ends up winning Baltimore with like a new
Yeah.
iteration of Gardevoir. So like
Yeah.
I just felt like the deck was like constantly being iterated on. It's another one of those decks that people just love to play. Um, for good reason, right? Like it's really fun. It's very intricate and skill based. You can do crazy stuff with Monkey Dory. Um, and I think it's like honestly one of the few decks on this list that I think has seen play like throughout the whole 2024.
It's
I'm
still
actually
what's.
surprised
Sorry,
it's
go ahead.
not like second or competing for first. So
Yeah, me too. It's still being iterated upon, which is the crazy part of this whole
yeah,
thing. Like even now, like Slow Guardy just came out like 2 weeks ago. Like constantly just being iterated on, and I actually think Guardy's in one of the best places it's been in a long time at the current moment. Like this deck is seriously strong, and I think the way it goes into Drago right now is a little bit um, misunderstood. I think would be the way I put it. I think a lot of people think it's like a free matchup for Drago. It's really not. It really is not. I think people are starting to realize that there's a lot of counterplay that you can have even into Drago. So even Gardevoir's like terrible matchups really aren't that terrible. So expect to see Gardevoir a lot in the new year as well. Maybe until rotation. I don't even know what it loses in rotation. Do you know? Like
it loses a huge card, Neil. Probably the most important one. It loses Curlia.
Drifloon? Oh, it loses Curlia. Oh
Yeah.
God, yeah, okay, that's bad. So I guess it will die eventually. But
Who
expect to
knows,
see it a
bro?
lot until April. I still think this deck is really good.
Yeah.
All right,
So
number two, we have what I thought was going to be number one, but I guess I had a lot of recency bias in that one. We have Regidrago V-Star, and as Ciaran kind of alluded to at the start of the episode here, this is one of those things where you can kind of see how good it was just based off the fact that it was only good from, let's say, June, July, and it shot all the way up to number two. So Regidrago, as we all know, has been dominating tournaments for about 6 months now. It's been unbelievable, and probably the closest thing to an S tier deck I think I've seen in a while. I have to think as far back as Palkia, I think, to see an S tier as good as this, which was what, like 2022 Worlds. So really
you're just
strong
skipping
deck.
Lugia.
Oh, I forgot about Lugia. So yeah, I guess we had Lugia, we had Palkia, we had Arc Intel. So I guess every year has kind of had its own S tier when I think about it.
Yeah.
But this deck does feel very strong. You have so many attackers, so many things, and I think out of all the decks, I guess Lugia excluded because Lugia also had this feature, but there's so many iterations, like so many things you can do to Drago to counter your bad matchups that it feels so impossible to counter. Aside from the fact that it has no weakness, right? Like it's just so difficult to counter. Like you can remember when Palkia V-Star came out, like people started playing Flying Pikachu, when Arc Intel was a thing, people started playing like Lycan Rock. Like there's always a counter, and with Lugia kind of before rotation eluded that as well, just because it had so many options. But good luck countering Regidrago V-Star, and that's why I think it's been so good, despite everybody knowing it's the best deck and no one can do anything about it.
Yeah, I'm still surprised it was number two, just because like we're saying, it hasn't seen that like it didn't basically have the first half of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like people are just tired of Drago at this point too. Like it's just so good. And like all the best players play Drago. So like every tournament there's always just gonna be like a million of them like competing for top cut or for the win. Um so it is a cool deck, I guess. Like if I had to go over the tier one decks, like that we've had, like you're kind of saying like Lugia, like the Palkia, like it feels the most fair to play against. Like even though it's the best, like it doesn't feel broken to me. Like when I sit across from it, you know? Um
It definitely
so
feels way more fun than Arc Intel. I'll tell you that. That was the worst. Like that was the absolute bottom of the
Yeah, that's one of
barrel,
my
man.
least formats ever.
Arc Intel mirrors, Jesus. Like I think what's important about an S tier deck is how fun or intricate the mirror can be, and Draco mirror can actually be pretty intricate. So I support it as an S tier deck. I think.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I don't. Also, I feel like maybe I play a deck that's good against Drago, so maybe I'm not as tired of it.
Yeah, so you don't care.
Um,
I'm not tired of it either because I play Draco, so I don't really mind. But I know a lot of
yeah.
people are just over it. Like, but you know what? Like when I think about it and I contrast it again to those S tier formats, this is the least tired I think people have been of an S tier deck in a long time. Because like I remember the
Yeah.
Lugia, like there's almost like protests outside TPCI headquarters at one point with Lugia. People hated Palkia, and I absolutely hated Arkansas, so I definitely feel the hate on that one. All right, number one, and I'm sure all of you have guessed it by this point, but number one is Charizard EX, beating out number two by almost double the amount of
Yeah, it's
points.
crazy.
We've talked about Charizard in passing. We've also talked about how I think when this is all said and done, Charizard will go down as one of the best cards in history. I will still stick by that. I think Charizard, the stats, the versatility, the oppression with Dusknoir, like there is so much going for this deck. And as you can see, it has been going for almost a year now. I don't remember when Charizard first got good, but I think it was just after LAIC. So it's been a solid year of Charizard.
Yeah. I mean, I think Charizard, like, it's like kind of one of those decks that's seen played the whole year. Um, I don't feel like Charizard was ever like oppressive or like amazing. I think right after rotation, I think Charizard kind of took over as like the best deck for a bit. Toward won his fifth IC with
Mm-hmm.
Charizard, but it's always felt like Charizard's been like a solid deck, and like people just really like playing Charizard. And part of it is like people like Charizard the Pokemon, but I think another part of it is just like Pidgeot's a nice card. Um, like the current iteration with Dusknoir, I think it's really fun. It adds depth to the deck. Um, but yeah, like it doesn't feel to me like as dominating as the number one deck should be. But I think it's just one of those things where it's just like it's been solid for like an entire year. Like every tournament
Yeah.
you go to, you're like, all right, I'm gonna have to play against some Charizard. So,
And this is something I think about a lot, but I wonder how much the release of the battle decks like impact these scores, right? Like you look at the top five, so Gardevoir and Charizard both had battle decks, and the amount of new players I see on a day-to-day basis that show up with Gardevoir and show up with Charizard, and they have like the regular arts, like they bought the battle deck is insane. So like Pokemon's commitment to these like the availability of this top decks is pretty cool, right? And like I wonder if Regidrago V-Star got a League Battle deck, how much the play rate would go up, just because people would have access to these like otherwise hard to find old V-Stars. So I mean like cool to see, awesome to see Charizard do well consistently, and I think it's not a bad deck for the game. Like as you said, like the deck's kind of just solid. It's pretty fun. There's lots of different ways to build it. Still like possible to be kind of creative with it, and there is a lot of counterplay to it as well, right? I think Ogremon coming out did a lot for the counterplay of Charizard. And Drago being really good also kind of dampens it down a little bit. So I don't think Charizard's going anywhere. I think we're going to see it a lot again for the next 4 or 5 months, whatever it is, until rotation, and then we'll reevaluate from there. But that's our number one, Charizard EX.
yep.
And those are the top 10 decks of the year of 2024 based off Limitless points. If there's anything you guys think that we missed, let us know down below. Obviously, this is not our metric, but few like notable omissions on here. So like no Terapagos, as I said. Terapagos has been really dominant recently, but it is at number 15. Miraidon, Ancient Box, Dragapult, Iron Thorns, Palkia. I mean, none of these really move the needle for me. Really, I don't really see any obvious omissions. Maybe Miraidon would be the only
Yeah, I
one.
think Dragapult might be the one. I would say,
Yeah,
yeah, Dragapult and Miraidon probably.
yeah,
Um, but I don't know, neither of them were ever that good. So,
yeah.
or
So I
like
mean,
not that they're not that good, but like not like that dominant. Like to be like, okay, like how is this on the list?
pretty straightforward list to be honest. And I think one day when we look back at 2024, we'll be pretty happy with kind of the way it panned out and all the cool decks that we got to see and experience. I think people are pretty sick of this stale format now, but don't worry, you're getting a really oppressive Badoo in about 3 weeks, so this is all going to change real fast. Anything else?
No, not really.
No? Okay. I just want to give a shout out to a guy I played at League last week, and this guy is my boy, but I'm not going to out him for legal reasons. He was playing Terapagos, and every time he played Glass Trumpet, he just went, and I thought it was just the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. So if you're playing Glass Trumpet, please make that noise every time, like you're playing the Royal Trumpet. That's all I have to say. I died laughing when he did it. It was just really, really random. I just want to give him a quick shout out on the pod. I feel like there's definitely something else I'm supposed to be shouting out, but I can't remember. So if I was supposed to shout you out, I'm gonna shout you out next week, respectfully. For all of you, have a great 2025. We'll be with you every week of the way. Um, yeah, take those New Year's resolutions, get into the gym. I don't know what else to say. What else do people like resolute about? Like eating healthy, getting to the gym. Like
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't
And
really
do you have
have any.
any Pokemon New Year's resolutions?
No, I don't have anything really. Like, I think my resolution would be to play more old format. I think that's where my heart is right now.
Hmm.
Really, really enjoying playing old formats because I'm kind of sick of modern, and like it really does make you better at modern Pokemon when you go back and play old formats and stuff. How about you? Any resolutions?
Not really. Just like win.
Just win.
I feel like that's not a resolution. I always want to do that. So
Just win, have fun. Like, I mean, I think my
yeah.
my message always is remember this is just a game and just enjoy yourself. And maybe if 2024 was a year you sweated out a lot and you didn't have a lot of fun playing Pokemon, maybe take a step back and really enjoy the experience of playing Pokemon again. Go back to square one and really just have those first tournament feelings and stuff. Other than that, yeah, we'll see you next week. Let us know down below what you think of the list, if we had any omissions. And as always, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Peace.